Hey everybody, Fabian for Liberty, FabianForLiberty.com. So FEMA is now acting in relief mode over the hurricane tropical storm Sandy, which has had devastating effects on the East Coast. I'm going to talk about what that means for the election. But first I want to break down what FEMA is doing and the argument from the left and people like the amazing atheists that are saying Mitt Romney would cut FEMA and how that's immoral. Let's break that down. Hey everybody, Fabian for Liberty. So I saw this video this morning by the amazing atheist who I disagree with probably about 90% of what he says. He's very funny and has a great delivery with his videos and what have you. On this particular video, and many of you know, I don't get into responding to people or to any of that. But when I see something so absurd, and not just by him, but by the left in general, yesterday on MSNBC, you had Chris Matthews speaking with Chuck Todd and asking Chuck Todd, what's the president doing to keep us safe on Hurricane Sandy? He is the commander-in-chief and he's in the Situation Room. Now, forget about the fact he let 4 Americans die during Benghazi and he was watching that, then went to bed, and they say it's a video, total lies, bigger than the Watergate scandal, but let's not talk about that. In fact, we'll have an investigation after the election about the Benghazi ambassador murder that Obama is very likely complicit in, as I said from the very get-go. But I thought going over FEMA and some of their past performance would be important in light of Hurricane Sandy. Because again, there is this thought that somehow a big government, this big benevolent government, is able to take care of you better than your own local community. And without the printing press over at the Federal Reserve, because you always say, oh, well, only the federal government has the resources, and the states couldn't be able to take care of themselves. Well, actually, I kind of disagree with that. I think that if there wasn't the government dependence, you would have states, neighbors, families, communities, churches, mosques, synagogues, everybody pitching in, and the American people would pitch in, like they've done overwhelmingly in the relief efforts in Haiti, for example, or even in Katrina. That was the donations to the Red Cross were huge. That's what the American people are all about. But again, the left, like the amazing atheist, believes that it's the benevolent big government are the only ones that could take care of an emergency, which again is something I want to float out there. The whole notion of how people react in emergencies. Like, what happens if it's a banking collapse? Are we then going to have people saying, well, I know we'll have people saying, well, only the government can bail out these big banks. They'll have to save the economy, because if not, millions of people will lose their job and we'll have a 25% unemployment rate. So government must print more money. They must have the inflation tax and steal the wealth from the poor and the middle class via the inflation tax in order for them to cover the losses of the banking elites. If not, the economy will implode. Isn't that the same argument? Because here the argument is, well, it's moral that FEMA goes in. They need to help these people that can't help themselves. Like the people in New Orleans who, some, not all, but some, decided to stay in their hotel or in their apartment or in their house, even though they clearly were saying, hey, big storm coming, leave town. Pretty simple message. They decided to stay. So they're on top of a building with a help me sign waiting for the feds to come in and rescue them. I don't know about you, but I think most Americans, or at least the Americans that I'm speaking to right now, are about personal responsibility and taking care of themselves and taking care of their family, not waiting around for President Obama to keep us safe. But let's just look at some of the past experiences, because perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps the big benevolent FEMA that's coming to take your guns away and basically misallocate resources on an unprecedented scale, maybe that's the right solution. Post-Katrina, there was so much fraud and abuse, I can't even cover it all in this short video, but for example, the $3 million that they used to pay for 4,000 beds that were never used. Or what about the trailers that were mobile homes that they were spending tens of thousands of dollars on each mobile home that they later sold for, I think it was like $500. Yeah, that worked out pretty well. And not only that, but they were filled with formaldehyde and all kinds of other toxic chemicals that actually exposed the government to bigger lawsuits over the physical health damage it did to the people residing in these little death traps with all kinds of chemicals and all kinds of crap that was used to build them. That's just skimming the surface. The Forbes reported in the past performance of Hurricane Katrina, FEMA fell into this trap with respect to the hurricanes that hit Miami, like Hurricane Francis. In its wake, FEMA lavished $31 million on only 12,600 city residents who were virtually unscathed. It blew another $9 million on rental assistance for about 5,000 residents whose homes were never even damaged. 720,000 went to only 222 people for TV sets, or 228 people for TV sets, air conditioners, furniture, microwaves, based solely on oral claims. FEMA also paid for 315 funerals. Only 123 deaths were storm-related. It goes on and on. The 2003 audit showed that the SBA, the Small Business Administration, made $114 million in disaster relief loans available to people who didn't need them, including 4 millionaires. After 9/11, SBA lent $239 million to businesses in Oklahoma, Georgia, Pennsylvania, hundreds of miles from Ground Zero and the Pentagon. It goes on and on and on to talk about how the misallocation of funds being used. Now, where do they get the money? Because they get their money, they don't have their money, so they borrow it from China, or, oh, that's right, they print it, and that printed money makes all your food prices go up and your gas prices, and really hurts the poor and the middle class the most. So all this misallocation of funds and resources actually end up screwing the very people they claim they're trying to help. That's the whole irony of this whole entire situation. Now, one more just to just drive the point home. In the wake of Katrina, FEMA spent $10 million to renovate and furnish 240 rooms in Alabama, which housed only 6 occupants of the storm. Remember all the government assistance cards that were given out, like an EBT card, in the wake of, or in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina? It was billions of dollars, and people were buying Christmas presents, TVs, all kinds of crap. Now, are there people that are hurt in these storms that need help? Yes. Does the federal government have a role within that? To a certain extent, they do. I think they should give assistance to states. But no, they come in and they take everything over. They take everything over in a way that inhibits the local communities that FEMA has no clue about whatsoever from really moving forward with the disaster relief effort. The last point I want to mention about the benevolent and great FEMA, who's going to come, take your guns away, confiscate your private property in many cases, basically make matters much worse and hurt the poor and the middle class with the inflation and the misallocation of resources, is the flood insurance. That's available to FEMA because FEMA believes that, hey, if you can't afford to pay for flood insurance and you live in a flood area, common sense will dictate you shouldn't live there. But no, FEMA, they're going to actually say, you know what? We're going to make flood insurance really affordable to you. In fact, many times we'll just give it to you. And if you live in an area that keeps flooding over and over again, we're just going to fit the bill. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Once again, proving beyond the shadow of a doubt, big government is never been the solution. It's not going to be the solution. And just because they have access to the criminal banking cartels, that they get to print trillions of dollars a year in budget deficit, to finance this budget deficit and to finance this reckless amount of resource misallocation, doesn't mean that they have somehow the moral high ground and they can make things better. In fact, they make things much, much worse. What do you think about FEMA and its role in disaster relief? Does it even have a role in disaster relief? And if it does, does it not really just make matters worse to begin with? I'd like to hear your comments on this. Share this video, subscribe if you enjoy. I'm Fabian for Liberty. Check out FabianForLiberty.com. I'm out.